All right, everyone. So now we are going to talk about a Pew Research Center study that I thought was super interesting. Had a bunch of interesting tidbits I thought I would share with you. And the reason I share these things is because I think as men, it is important to have a loose conceptualization of what is going on around us in the world so that we can make better choices and so that we can kind of understand where other people are coming from and maybe why we were acting in certain ways. But here are the tidbits of information I wanted to share with you from that study. So, according to the Pew Research Center, the adult milestones that young adults are hitting are vastly different from than that of their parents. Young adults today are much more likely than their counterparts 30 years ago to be college graduates. Kind of checks out. Young adults are more likely to be employed full-time now than young adults in 1993. Interesting. Very interesting. Today's young adults are getting married much later than their parents' generation. The gap in the share who are married is especially wide among young adults ages 25 to 29. 29% were married in 2023, compared with 50% in 1993. Wow. So, between the ages of 25 to 29, in 2023, only 29% were married. And yet in 1993, 50% were married. That's interesting. And then lastly, young adults are also delaying having children. For example, 27% of adults ages 30 to 34 had a child in their household in 2023, compared with 60% in 1993. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so I just want to work my way through these stats and maybe go back and make some comments on them, let you know what I think about them and potentially why they have occurred, because I think this is very interesting. All these stats they go and show like a certain way that our culture has been thinking and a certain message that our culture has been pushing. And whether that's right or wrong, I'll leave that up to you. But I do want to discuss these things because I think they're important to discuss. So, young adults today are much more likely than their counterparts 30 years ago to be college graduates. I kind of feel neutral on this one. I mean, cool, I guess. I think that there's been a huge uptick in recent years of college enrollment. I talked in a video a while ago about, men recently have been dropping out, but that's because they're starting to recognize, there are different ways to make a very solid living in this world that don't require college and don't require tons of student debt, And so I think there was this message, and I don't think, I know, because I went to high school, there was this huge push to say, if you don't go to college, you're never going to make it in life. And that was just a foolish and a stupid message to hear. And it was pushed to everybody, from different schools in my area. That was just the message was go to college, go to college. Like, we're a college prep school, we're going to take you to. So I am by no means anti-college. I think it has its place. I think it gives people many valuable skills if you actually take it for what it's worth and you work hard and you study and you actually go to learn and not to party, because that's what college is for. Sorry, I hate to break it to you, but it's supposed to be a schooling institution that you come out of and you are a well-educated adult, but a lot of times that's not what happens. But yeah, so young adults today are much more likely than their counterparts 30 years ago to be college graduates. Doesn't really surprise me. I think more people have been going into college for multiple years in the past, like the last 15 years. So that's not a huge surprise to me. Young adults are more likely to be employed full-time now than young adults in 1993. This one kind of caught me off guard at first, and then I kind of tried to apply it from a cultural lens, and my guess, and Pew Research Center just kind of gives you these numbers. They don't really necessarily give you exact reasons for why things happen. Sometimes they make guesses, but these are just the numbers that they came up with through their studies. So young adults are more likely to be employed full-time now than young adults in 1993. Now, I talk all in this podcast about how you get to make choices with your life to change your future. And that choices are the thing that matter the most, not external factors. But that's not to say that external factors don't exist. They do. It's just sometimes you have to fight a little harder against those things, and that's a choice you make. All right? So, that being said, the economy, in many ways, is not what it used to be. But even on from a more ideological level, I think that the concept of like the male breadwinner has very much gone away in many ways in 2023. Now, some of that is because, as I was trying to say, um, most families have dual incomes. The husband and the wife work because that is how they're going to reach their money goals and accomplish the things they wish to accomplish and have the lifestyle they wish to lead. And fair enough. Fair enough. But I don't think that was as big a thing back in 1993. I think in 1993, there was still this vestige, at least, of the idea that, okay, the man is a breadwinner. The woman is supposed to run the household and make sure things go smoothly there and take care of all the different facets that happen back there. Whereas the man is supposed to go out and to, for lack of a better term, kill something and bring it back to the cave. That was the idea. And that idea, I believe, has slowly eroded to get us to where we're at in 2024 now. It's crazy, 2024. So perhaps that is why young adults are more likely to be employed full-time now than young adults in 1993. Okay, the third one. These last two are, in my opinion, a little depressing. I mean, that's how I see it. But today's young adults are getting married much later than their parents' generation. The gap in the share who are married is especially wide among young adults ages 25 to 29. So in that age range, 29% were married in 2023, compared with 50% in 1993. So less people are married. I mean, we all knew this, and I think, there's probably a multitude of reasons for this, and I probably have a whole episode I could do on this, and I probably will at some point. But I think in many ways, faith in the institution of marriage has heavily eroded. I mean, that bank is barely standing there. Tree roots are holding it together at this point, but it's eroded pretty bad. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and also I said institution, but for me, I believe it's a sacrament. But I digress. I just want to make that clear. So 29% of young adults ages 25 to 29 were married in 2023, which isn't a huge number, and that's compared to 50% in 1993. So I think in 1993, people grew up a little faster, and I have talked about this in other episodes, but helicopter parenting has been a topic of discussion for many years now in the 2000s. Since like 2012, I started hearing that term thrown around of helicopter parenting, and I think that we really haven't estimated exactly how much of growing up that is inhibited for a lot of people. And it's a fact. I mean, we're growing up later and later and later. Like people are moving away from their parents' house later and later and later. And, I'm not saying your parents shouldn't help you out. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be there to guide you. But I think in many ways, parents have not equipped their children to go out into the world and make a life for themselves. They've inhibited them because they've basically been an enabler of just constantly giving and giving and giving and not asking for them to produce anything in and of themselves. And that's actually what builds you into a person of character and a person who can go out into the world and provide for themselves and make a living and learn about the boring shit in life, like taxes, But I think our education system hasn't done a great job. But parents, I believe, are the number one source of information for their children and should be the number one source of information for their children. And in many ways, I think parents have not done a great job, and maybe there's a lot of great reasons for why they haven't. That's possible. Maybe their parents were abusive and terrible, and so they went the completely opposite way and were just over-nurturing, I don't know. But I do think that is why less people are getting married today than in the past. And then lastly, young adults are also delaying having children. For example, 27% of adults ages 30 to 34 had a child in their household in 2023, compared with 60% in 1993. This just goes back, to point out more and more that I think we are growing up later and later and later as a generation in our culture. Like Gen Z and millennials in many ways are just taking longer to actually bloom, and to take on these different milestones of responsibility, which do in many ways lead you to a rich and happy life, such as getting married and making that jump in your life, and such as having children that you get to raise and instruct and hopefully, make into amazing men and women. but we're growing up later. That's true. I mean, there's no way around it. We're growing up slower and slower and slower. That's just, as I said before in the last section, the brutal fact of the matter. That's, face it as it is. So anyways, I thought these were all very interesting stats and kind of food for thought to just kind of think about and kind of see where you fall on it. Hopefully I didn't preach too much about my ideas and all these things, but I thought it was interesting to bring up to your attention, and I'll let you go from there. If you have any interesting thoughts on the matter, please drop it in the comments below. I'd appreciate it. And that's section 2 of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed.